Welcome to Millennium Counseling Center's podcast, where each week we go in depth into all things mental health, addiction recovery, and being our healthiest and happiest self. Enjoy. This week's episode will be hosted by one of the many incredible therapists here at the Millennium Counseling Center. Please enjoy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dating in Your 20s podcast series. We are recording on a different platform today, and you might be able to see some videos of us down the line while recording podcasts. So we're improving over here, or we think we let us know what you think. But yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about attachment styles and attachment styles in dating, and just kind of have a, chill conversation about it. Amelia's kind of down with the flu right now.
I'm down bad, actually. So this is day 3. Yesterday was day 3 of symptoms, and it was terrible. I had vertigo. I sounded horrible. Not my best. But I mean, that's also kind of why we're trying this platform. I think it allows us to be able to see our virtual clients, kind of have some flexibility in time and scheduling, which is really great. And have a fun video, even if I slightly look like death, but that's okay.
That is A-okay. Okay, cool. Should we jump right into it?
Yeah, attachment styles. I mean, do you like using attachment work in your own therapeutic work with clients?
Let me think. I think clients typically come in to session potentially already knowing their attachment style.
Yeah.
And then again, it's kind of like meeting your client where they're at. But I do think that a lot of my clients will come in being like, well, I know it's my anxious attachment style, or I know it's my attachment style. And oftentimes they're spot on with what I would think as well. So it is then kind of helpful to use that language and talk about it. But definitely in relationships and when my clients are kind of navigating, I have a lot of college clients right now navigating long distance relationships. So we've had a lot of conversation around attachment styles and also just how closely attachment styles and communication are tied. And then communication obviously being like a core pillar of a successful relationship as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, there are 4 attachment styles. There's secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. And basically, this theory was formed by, I think it was 2 psychologists, right? I can't remember. My grad school education is not really following me through here. But basically, the main idea is that humans are biologically wired to form attachment for survival. So they think that the early attachment that you had when you were born, when you were a baby, how your parents treated you, that kind of founded this style that you then go into work relationships, romantic relationships, friendships with. And a lot of people end up being either avoidant or anxious. I haven't really met a secure person yet. But I mean, yeah, I use it a lot.
There's subsets too, I think.
Yeah.
Which is important to point out. We're going to keep it basic right now.
Basic, yeah. For just so it's not information overload. But yeah, I use it a lot. I mean, not a lot. I have qualms with it, just like any theory. I think that there's validity with it, but I also think when we take it so realistically and literally, we tend to only cling to that. And I think I find the most use for it when I'm doing emotional regulation with clients. So kind of looking at stress, conflict, those types of things in any kind of relationship, whether it's romantic, friends, family. Mm-hmm. And then I do a lot of couples work. I work with a lot of couples. And so I've found it helps people understand where the other person is coming from. But then when they tend to use it as just the answer, that's where it gets a little messy with how I integrate it.
Yeah. No, I think when people use it as an answer and or an excuse or a crutch can sometimes be.
Do you want to go through the 4
sure.
and kind of what are some of the signs of them?
Yes. So we'll start with secure. It's kind of like that warm, fuzzy, cutesy feeling. I don't know. That's sort of how I envision it. Definitely secure trust and an easier time forgiving, able to set boundaries and then kind of follow through with them, feeling comfortable setting boundaries and feeling comfortable allowing them to play out in their relationships. Managing emotions pretty well. It's kind of don't want to say like level-headed, but like very aware.
Yeah.
Very aware.
Yeah.
Responsive, open, willing to have conversations, not afraid to share what they need and what they want, and also feel grounded and sort of validated in their experience as well. That's a little bit of secure. Do you want to take us through anxious?
I'll take us through anxious. I mean, that feels so right. I do have an anxious attachment style. So a lot of times this is people who have like heavy relationship insecurities. They have a fear of abandonment. They lack boundaries, whether good or bad. Their mood fluctuates very heavily, especially in communication with people. And I think it's because they find ways to read into things. So even if it's like text, FaceTime, whatever, they're typically dissecting what you're saying. So
A lot of overthinking.
Yes. So their mood is really like high to low and goes very quickly. They're highly sensitive and typically overly accommodating. And I feel like that comes out in my work life. Do you want to go to avoidant?
Yes, I want to kind of point out too, like Amelia kind of applied some personal connection to feeling the anxious attachment. And I want to kind of just like circle back to how we started the episode as well. Just because we like feel like we fit into one of these boxes doesn't necessarily mean that it now needs to like completely organize your life. I think there's definitely some awareness or some benefit and some productivity that can come out of like trying to kind of figure out and learn a little bit more, or maybe take a quiz or talk to your therapist or ask your friends and kind of like get a little bit curious about where you would stand in this kind of not ranking, I guess, list or box or whatever it may be. But also recognizing too that like, I don't know, I feel like it's not like shame or guilt or whatever, but there can be a lot of emotions being like, oh, like that's me, I'm avoidant, or that's me, I'm anxious, like there's kind of like, I don't know if pride is what I'm trying to get behind, but like there's not I don't know, there doesn't need to be intense emotions around like claiming one of these, because you're also not necessarily claiming them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, it's like take what you want and leave the rest is kind of what I'm feeling with some of this stuff too.
If you're not relating to any of these four, like if you're hearing these and you're like, that doesn't, like I can't put myself in any of these boxes, like that's okay too. And obviously there's some more research and some more exploration that has to happen. And just like any theory, this might not be yours. Therapists operate and work within a lot of different modalities and a lot of different theories that they find best and most useful in certain situations with clients. So I'm not going to use attachment theory with all of my clients, just the ones who seem to need it. So if you've never heard of this, never seen this, don't relate to this, that's also okay too.
Totally. With that being said, I'm exploring with how I feel about claiming the avoidant. The avoidant. I don't really know. Maybe I need to talk to my therapist. I don't know. But avoidant attachment style is definitely this fear of feeling close to someone else. I think that stems from having a strong sense of independence. But when you feel that closeness potentially coming, or it feels like things are kind of closing in on you, you can kind of choose, take a left turn and withdraw, or be a little bit more distant, especially emotionally distant. Just, I don't know if it's fear to protect yourself, or I don't know. I feel like avoidant potentially in some of my clients, I see that connecting back to a lot of their childhood as well. Sometimes it can be kind of shutting down and being unresponsive to a partner or to a friend or in communication. Just like, this is a lot. I'm going to shut down and not deal with this right now. But then on the other side of it, there's also this logical piece, I think, as well, where I'm maybe not necessarily shutting down, but I'm like going to step away to think about things a little bit more. In a way that can be a little bit overthinking, but also in a way that's just like, okay, wait, let me like pull out the pieces for a second and like what the heck is going on? And then sometimes in allowing yourself to think about it a little bit more, it allows that avoidant attachment style to be like, okay, now I'm just going to leave that person and never speak to them again. So there's that aspect too.
Yeah. And then the last one is disorganized. So unable to self-regulate, you kind of find struggles with intimacy and trust. So a little bit of that avoidant and anxious. There's a tendency to dissociate. There is a lack of empathy. It's kind of wanting closeness, but then being fearful of it. And that's kind of where those avoidant pieces come in. It's kind of like that intertwined piece of both of the avoidant and the anxious attachment styles. But okay, so when it comes to attachment styles, I think that as a Dating in Your 20s podcast, we need to explain what this looks like in dating situations.
Mhm.
So if you're anxious, that might look like over-texting, a fear of abandonment, over-analyzing everything that's being said, especially on apps, since that's like such the place where people are meeting. You're anxiously changing your profile all the time. You're reading into every single thing that someone might have said on their profiles. Like you might not even have an attachment with these people yet, but you're still showing your attachment style
Totally.
in these experiences. And then avoidant might be like pulling away when things get too close. So like when someone wants to go on a date, you might be like, no, it was fun and flirty on the apps, but like, I don't really want to get to know you in person. Ghosting, avoiding labels. So like being really into being like, oh, we're hanging out, like not wanting to put anything that feels, I guess like heavy is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, concrete was what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely think that's helpful to sort of like place it into the dating scene and the dating world as well. I want you to explain your little
Oh, yeah. So I was listening to this podcast and they had this psychologist on here, Ty Gibson. I'm probably pronouncing her first name incorrectly, but she basically explained that it's really important to know your attachment style in dating situations, not because it, gives you an answer, but because if I'm going into a dating situation and I'm anxious attachment style, but I'm dating someone who's an avoidant attachment style, we're going in with different rule books. So I might be going in with the game of Scrabble in mind, and he might be going in with the game of Monopoly in mind. So like nothing's ever going to get accomplished. And so it doesn't necessarily fix a relationship and give you both like, oh, this is what our rules for this relationship's going to look like. But it's basically saying we're going to get nowhere without understanding that we both operate differently. So kind of more of an understanding and less of a, I have to be with someone who's the exact same attachment style as me, but understanding if you're dating someone who is a different attachment style from you, like you aren't going to operate similarly. And so it's kind of communicating. I think that's where like that communication piece is so important.
Yeah, what's coming up for me, I don't know if anyone's watching the newest season of Love is Blind, but this is definitely my guilty pleasure. I love watching Love is Blind for so many different reasons. And I don't know, it just like makes sense that I'm a therapist too, because the way that I view these shows is just like, I feel like it's almost like an extension of work sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's like fun work. Not that it always is fun, but you know what I mean? But yeah, there's this couple who's getting to know each other in the pods. And they talk about, I think they were talking about like love languages, and then they were talking about attachment styles. And the man in the situation was talking about how he had previously, in his past relationship, had a really difficult time kind of like handling the attachment style of his past relationship, which was anxious. He didn't share what he thought his avoidance style or what his attachment style was, but then the person that he was getting to know through Wall was talking about how she kind of identifies as having an anxious attachment style, and then kind of went into some of her family background and all of that. But it was really interesting to just like listen and be a fly on the wall to like the conversation that came from that. And the first time they talked about it, it wasn't what you were just talking about. It was like, whoa, we're different. This is not going to work. Automatic kind of avoidant attachment style, like fear, isn't going to work. I need to kind of like save myself while I can, or we were getting too close, but like, thank God we had this conversation. I don't think it's going to work. But they were able to meet like another day in the pods, and they were talking about it, and slowly but surely kind of came to the understanding of like, oh, being able to recognize that we are different, and then being willing to maybe put themselves in each other's shoes, or just kind of like, oh, that makes sense, or I don't know. It's always good to have as much information as possible. And I think this conversation can be helpful. Could be like, oh, sometimes I do act like this because of this. And that's not to say that you need an answer for every reason, every behavior or choice or action that you're choosing to take. But like, oftentimes I do think it's tied to something that you've previously experienced. And that's why, again, communication is huge, because you can maybe be like, take a step back, slow down, reflect, and be like, oh, I kind of like jumped at you a little bit because of X, Y, and Z. Or there can also be times that you were just like tired, annoyed, and you snapped. Like, that's okay too. And like, there doesn't need to be a theory that's going to let you, like, that's going to tell everyone that it was just basic. You were tired, annoyed, and hungry, and like whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they kind of it was cool to see kind of the transition of how they were talking about attachment styles and how it was like, oh, this is, instead of it being like a reason as to why we won't work, changing it to be like, oh, this is a reason, one of the reasons why we can commit to continuing to try to make it work or continuing to learn about one another.
Yeah. I think I need to learn
Little
how to
rant.
watch these shows with that lens. Cause like I tried watching Love is Blind. It just like bothers me. And I think it's because I'm coming at it with a therapeutic lens where I'm like, you guys need therapy. Like I really hope that on these shows like Love is Blind, The Bachelor, Love Island, like all these, I hope there's a therapist there.
I think there's something in their contract. Yeah.
Okay, praise God, because I'm like, y'all are going through it. Like, I can't imagine. You're probably so sleep deprived and like
That too.
you're getting.
I think I saw some lawsuit about it. Like they only offer like 4 or 6 sessions or something. So they're trying to get it to be higher. But yeah.
Okay, this is my official. If ABC or Netflix or anyone is watching this, because I'm sure you are with our many, many followers on TikTok, you guys need therapists. And I'll volunteer. Sounds fun. But no, I mean, I think that's one thing about, understanding your attachment style, but also understanding your attachment style can change. But it's typically when there's been like a repetition of something in your love life. So like the more that you've experienced a specific like trauma, we'll say, your attachment style might shift from what it was when you were a child. And I think that knowing that the first time you get ghosted suddenly does not mean that you're going to have an anxious attachment style. Like these things kind of have to be reoccurring. And I think attachment style is something that I struggle with a lot because there's this like blame that a lot of times happening on how you were raised and like your parents. And like, yes, I do think that that heavily affects your personality, but like most things, our personality is formed and developed and changed by other scenarios happening in our life. And I think a lot of people, when they get into attachment style, like cling to it and kind of use it kind of like this guy, I guess, on Love Island who's like, nope, I've been with someone who's an anxious person who has an anxious attachment style. I cannot be with her. And it's like, well, every person is different and they're going to experience and express it differently. And I think that's also kind of why it's important to know, but it's also important to know how it is with you personally.
Yeah. And I think that's again with the take what you want and leave the rest too. It's like however you want to use this in your life too. Like it doesn't need this episode on attachment styles and attachment theory doesn't necessarily need to then be like how you're going to govern your life. It can, a tidbit of it can be helpful, or maybe a whole segment can be helpful. I don't know. I just think there's fluidity and flexibility with how you use all of this.
Yeah. Specifically with dating though, something that I find so interesting is avoidant people are magnetically drawn to anxious people and like vice versa. And I think a lot of it is because of this like trope that we've created from movies and TV shows and books where it's like someone's chasing someone and someone's the runner and like there's this push and pull and there's like, will they, won't they? And reality is it's because like there's a lack of communication. Like how many times have you read a romance book and been like, if you guys would just talk, like you would be fine.
Especially when you're rooting, like you're watching the movie and you're rooting for these people to be together because you're very invested like me. I love rom-coms and I cry to like every movie. And we're like, just go and talk to them. Like, what are you doing? Like screaming and doing all of that. Like I get so invested. But the amount of times that I've just been like, speak to one another, please, is definitely very high.
Yeah. And I think that's why it feels so intense for people because it kind of feels like this experience that they see in the movies. But then again, like life isn't a movie. So like when it works out on the screen, but it's not working out in your life and you're like, well, where did I go wrong? I think the attachment style theory allows us to kind of get a greater picture of like, okay, these are the places where I've had faults and these are the places where my partner has had faults. Like, how do we best work through that as a team instead of what the avoidant person would do, which would probably walk away and the anxious person would probably take all the blame. And it's like, I don't believe relationships are 50-50. I think it's like 100 and 100. And on days where your partner can't give 100, like you make up for it. Like you can never be 50% of yourself. You always have to be like your whole self.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I think what's coming up for me too is in order to do kind of what we're talking about now, you need to like take a few steps back and just be able to put yourself in the position to be like reflective of yourself. And I think oftentimes that's the hardest part, because when you allow yourself to slow down and you kind of take on this reflective lens, especially of your own life, it's terrifying
Yeah.
because you're able to be like, oh, I could probably do a little bit better there, or I could work on that, or this and that. Like reflective and reflection can sometimes be really critical. And I think especially when we're honestly ourselves and others, it's way easier to point out all of the bad things, right? Like the whole thing, you don't leave a Yelp review unless you really hate it. Like it's, or like, you know what I mean? I mean, sometimes you're going to be like 5 stars, like this was great, but you're more likely to go leave a review on something that wasn't great. So I think in being reflective, it's scary to even just like get to this place. And I think that, I don't know, breaking down the stigma of like being reflective or self kind of just like being able to look inward can be helpful too, because then I don't think it puts as much pressure on whatever the answer is or the ending or the label or all of these things that like we don't love and these languages that we don't love. But in my personal therapist always says this, and I'm sure I've said it on here too, but it's just like having compassionate curiosity. And it's kind of like envisioning that you're like holding this container and you're just trying to like get as much information and as much feedback as possible. Not good, not bad, but just like general feedback, what's going on. And then looking at it. And like you've kind of mentioned, like looking at your puzzle and being like, how can I like look at this, ask questions, be compassionate to myself and to others, and just kind of like move from there. So that's my little segue on like how difficult it can be to even get to this point, because being reflective is scary. And I think people of all different attachment styles stray away from being reflective, because when you slow down and you look inward, you're going to find out things. And sometimes finding out things is not fun.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that something I was like thinking about while you were talking is we are our own best like investigators, but we're also our own worst critic. And so it's learning
basically what I was trying to say.
Yeah, that compassionate piece is so important. Like you can't just go look at the container and investigate it and be like, well, these are all the things that are wrong with it. You also need to recognize these are the things that are really good about this and kind of have those moments. And I think like attachment style is so great because then you can kind of look at how to be secure. Like if there is kind of a goal, like, yes, you can be anxious, but you also can work towards being secure. And I think like in dating situations, like if you're anxious, that you might need to learn how to like self-soothe in relationships instead of like seeking constant reassurance from your partner or seeking constant validation from your partner, and start learning how to give it to yourself, or like you might avoid situationships or emotionally unavailable partners. Like instead of thinking like I can fix them, or like maybe if I just give them more, they'll finally give it to me back. Like learn your own boundaries and be able to kind of set those for yourself and understand what that might look like. And it's going to be a trial and error piece. And that's where like that compassion comes in and is so important. I know I don't want to box you into the avoidant style, but like looking at how to date more securely, like what would that look like for an avoidant style attachment?
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's think about this. I think I'm the subset of, what is it? Anxious, like avoidant, anxious avoidant.
Anxious avoidant.
Okay, yeah. Because I think for me, it stems from, like why I choose to go down the avoidant route is because it stems from being hurt, I think. So it's more of I'm avoidant to protect myself, I think.
Yeah.
Or to get really into it, I'm avoidant because I don't feel like kind of like a core belief is sometimes that I'm like, oh, I'm not deserving, so let me just like remove myself from the situation. So yeah, but to be in a more secure, I think I have been working on this in the past few years too, as well, is working on just being more compassionate towards myself. I think, I don't know if I've mentioned on this podcast, but I played basketball and was at like a high level for a really long time. So my athletic identity, I think, seeps in here, and just like constantly judging myself and having these goals and needing to meet them at a specific time frame, and just kind of like really leaning into that perfectionist tendency. So I think it would look like just giving myself more grace and being more compassionate towards myself, and also being able to point out some of the pros and some of my characteristics that I enjoy about myself, because there are plenty of them, but slowing down and actually kind of listing those out or allowing them to like be real things.
Which, like, whether you recognize it or not, I just have to pinpoint this because we like to lift each other up too. But like, a lot of people in textbooks would say like something for an avoidant attachment style person to do would be like to practice emotional vulnerability. And like you just did that. Like, I think that there's certain steps that, again, like we have to, even if they don't feel big or they don't feel like they drastically change or make us more secure immediately, like you're still doing the hard work. Like therapy is hard work. And like, even if you're not in therapy, but you're listening to this podcast, or you're seeing our TikToks, you're like interested in figuring out how to become the best version of yourself when it comes to dating, like that's hard work. And you're taking the first step, which is curiosity. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So why do you think, like, I don't know, therapy helps us start to like heal our attachment styles and like the places where attachment has hurt us?
Me as like a personal therapist, I feel like I always just start about like, let's just get curious. Like I think I think people can come in and they can have all of these goals and all of these things and things that they want therapy to fix. And I think sometimes like a more solution-based therapy relationship is helpful, but I think I definitely lead towards just like self-exploratory therapy. And I think that's sort of when the healing comes in. It's just drawing the connections and learning more, being open, being flexible, kind of all the things that would lean into like a secure attachment style. Honestly, I think is sort of like, because ultimately too, take a little bit relational therapist lens, the therapeutic relationship is also really important. And oftentimes, I don't know if clients put this together. I definitely didn't put this together until I was in my relational therapy class, but like the actual relationship between the therapist and the client is like a huge vehicle for mimicking what you want to do within your relationships outside of therapy. So I think it's really just creating that environment where you're feeling comfortable enough to like lean into the things that would fall into the secure attachment style. I don't know if that's making sense, but
Yeah. I often tell clients, like, a lot of times in therapy, the therapist's job is to hold up a mirror and like allow you to like accurately see the reflection. But it's also so you can accurately hold up a mirror within the therapeutic room and see like, okay, this is what like a safe relationship looks like. This is, and again, I think that's kind of where that relational therapy work comes in of like, I tell my clients, especially like my clients who were in recovery, like when they're trying to navigate healing their relationships and they're having these conversations with me and they're getting really deep, I'm like, you just did it with me. Like you were just able to express these things with me. Like you're capable. It's just, I think sometimes we put relationships into boxes. And so we think that and sometimes a box is there to protect it. And sometimes a box is there to hide it. And so what are we trying to hide and what are we trying to protect? And what are ways we can kind of take those boxes and just let those relationships breathe and be more real and raw? And I think doing attachment work is a huge piece of that. Because I think awareness is power, and being aware of how you operate and how you work and how you think and act and do is powerful and is really, really important. But I also do not think awareness equals answers. There's a lot of like healing and work that has to be done. And I honestly don't think therapy's there for answers. That's not at all our job.
No. And like to go on a little tangent about being a therapist, like we talk about that all the time. Like we sometimes will catch ourselves like, oh, like I don't know what to do. Like I don't have the answer. Or I thought this was going somewhere, but it's not going somewhere. I'm feeling very like stuck with this one client or whatever. That's when oftentimes our supervisors, or I feel like we tell ourselves, we're like, look at the relationship that you are currently inhibiting with this person. Like, no, like the work is there and the proof is right there. They just were able to share how they're feeling. Or maybe even our clients were able to share that they think that they're feeling stuck. Like oftentimes being able to just communicate how you're feeling about in the moment is like way bigger than, or I don't know, like it's where you can see the growth and where you can kind of see the improvement, because typically in those situations, clients may have come in and a world where they were feeling comfortable or encouraged or confident enough to do that didn't exist.
Yeah. I guess this whole episode is basically encouraging listeners to reflect on their attachment style and to kind of the both and take the information that they need with that attachment style and what are areas of growth that they need to work on and what is suddenly becoming more aware from understanding their attachment styles, and also just like navigating that within not only dating relationships, but your relationship with yourself. Because I think in order to put ourselves out there and in order to date securely, we kind of have to be able to date ourselves for a second. And I guess I'm trying to reframe singleness, but also just like allow us to have a better understanding.
Singleness, but also like when you get into a relationship or when you start dating doesn't mean that like self-exploratory nature, is that sound right?
Self-exploration?
Yeah, self-exploration ends too.
Yeah.
You know, like I think if anything, and we'll eventually talk about like how to like stay true to yourself when you're in a relationship too. But like, I think there's a lot to be said about making sure you keep that part of yourself and kind of keep up that work individually when in a relationship. Because I think relationships definitely ebb and flow. And I think sometimes when they are kind of going through a rough patch is when you kind of stop spending that time and energy on yourself and stay curious within yourself.
Yeah. And understand, like we said, attachment styles are not something that are concrete. They're something that can change. And they're something that you'll start to learn more and more the more research and work that you do on it. So we're going to have a quiz for attachment style in our show notes. Feel free to go check that out. Or you can always schedule a consultation with one of us and we can talk attachment theory and work on some things that you might be looking at, especially when it comes to relationships. But I think that's all we have for today.
So fun.
I'm going to go take a nap. And for those of you who have not gotten the flu yet, stay safe, wash your hands, and, like chug vitamin C like it's your job.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.